To believe government is legitimate is to believe that slavery is legitimate, and that is not a right. We can consider the notion of government through our thoughts, but when we erroneously come to the incorrect conclusion and harden that into a belief system, that becomes a violent belief. The people who believe that slavery is legitimate through government are not within their rights. They are not within their rights to continue to believe that slavery is legitimate for anyone. Unfortunately, in the modern world, people don't understand the distinction. They think there's some sort of a distinction. They don't understand that they're the same thing, government and slavery. Government is slavery. If stealing 100% of the product of someone else's labor is slavery, at what percentage does it become not slavery? This question was originally, I ask this question all the time, but this question was actually originally posed by Frederick Douglass, a slave who escaped his captivity in the South and eventually went to Europe because he was under such duress of being captured and brought back into slavery in the southern states when he moved to the northern states. That he had to actually go over the ocean to where at least black slavery wasn't practiced at the time. Although they're in the other kind of slavery called the belief in a king and queen, called royalty. Slavery works better in the modern world because now people don't even know that they're slaves through mind control and mental conditioning and calling it a euphemized term called government and authority. Here's the bottom line when it comes to belief systems, folks. As difficult even as it may be for some people in this room even to get this concept, no one has the right to believe that people are property. In addition to that, no one has the right to believe that slavery is legitimate for anyone. And now, I'm going to take it a step further. Really pay attention to this one. Because here's where people are really in wrong belief who are refusing to get this message and wake up. No one has the right to believe that slavery is legitimate for anyone, including themselves. This is a big thing you hear even in the freedom movement. Well, if other people want to be slaves, that's their right. No, it's not. No, it's not. No one has the right to believe that they are rightful slaves. Do you want to know why? That belief perpetuates the belief in the legitimacy of slavery, which is also not a right. You don't have a right to believe that you're the legitimate slave of another being. There is no such right in nature. Never has been. We have to abandon this erroneous notion that somehow government is legitimate and a ruling class and a slave class is legitimate through the idea of authority, this erroneous notion. And I think Samuel Adams, again, who is my heart and soul of a dissident, Samuel Adams, who rode on horseback from Boston to Philadelphia to speak at the Pennsylvania State House and urge for a physical rebellion against the tyranny of the crown. Without that man doing that, the American Revolution may have never happened. And I'll tell you something, it's probably the closest thing to a divinely inspired holy act that has ever taken place on this planet. And the people who don't understand what happened in the American Revolution, I feel sorry for them for believing in revisionist history, which I'm going to talk about. Because we need to understand what exactly happened here in the Revolutionary War era period and understand the type of blood sacrifice that, thank God, the men who were willing to give that blood conducted. Because they made it possible for someone like me to stand here and speak these words today. We would be bending over and kissing the ass of a king or queen. And most of us still are, except it's called government now. Well, let me tell you something. Without those men, these ideas wouldn't have propagated in this land to the extent that they did. We owe them a debt I know the significance of their actions, of their minds and of their actions, because I've read their philosophy, which most people have never done. Samuel Adams, the chief conspirator of the American Revolution, said, "It is the greatest absurdity to suppose it in the power of one or any number of men to renounce their essential natural rights or the means of preserving those rights," which we're going to talk about a little bit later. If men, through fear, fraud, or mistake, should in terms renounce or give up an essential natural right, the eternal law of reason and the grand end of society would absolutely vacate such renunciation. He is saying here, you don't have a right to give up your rights, because that puts everybody else in jeopardy of slavery. You have no right not to understand what a right is. You have a right to not understand how to bake an apple pie, but you don't have a right to not understand what a right is. This is something that is a duty to understand. It transcends a right. You must understand it, because the ignorance of its understanding places other beings in jeopardy of slavery. And he's saying if somebody says, I'm the rightful slave of another, the society itself simply vacates that abdication of a right and says, no, you do not have a right to abdicate that. It's not only a right, it's a duty and a responsibility that you can never shirk, actually, in nature. You can only make the claim that you're going to shirk it, but you can't really do that. Continuing with this quote, he said, "The right of freedom being the gift of God Almighty, it is not in the power of man to alienate this gift and voluntarily become a slave." That's why they don't want people reading the Founding Fathers' writings. They might get some crazy ideas that they're free and not owned by others, and don't have a right to renounce their freedom. That wild idea might break out, and freedom along with it. Yeah, they don't want you reading these man's writings. Certainly not. That's why they're going to pull them from school, and that's why they're going to propagate these Marxists, these neo-Marxists, and these absolutely outright communist ideas that somehow these were evil men. And the people who buy into this psyop don't know their history at all. At all.